The past couple days, it's really been a hell of a time on Facebook. I've been trying to keep up with all the news and post about it and talk about my opinions and had to account for different things that happen. And I've had these big posts I've tried to make, and you just end up with these massive paragraphs, and nobody wants to read them. And I just really wanted to put my thoughts all in one place, and I saw somebody else make a video talking about their opinions, so I thought I might as well do the same thing. It goes without saying that we're all human beings, and we have to use our short time here to treat each other like such. And this has just been terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Talking about the Dallas shooting, I have a real heavy heart. It's an absolute tragedy. But what happened doesn't define what people pushing for racial equality are about, or the Black Lives Matter movement is about. Just like how the shootings by these police officers don't define what all police officers are about. And I think that's something that's realized by the side that has been protesting. They realize that not all police officers are like this, but these things still happen. And it's something that we cannot allow to happen. We can't in particular stop what happened in Dallas from happening. It's a sad fact, but as long as our country is the way that it is, we can't stop it. But the police are the police, and they are, they are there to protect us, and they can work to reform how they hire people and what they do to train their officers. Maybe just further training on how to handle these situations where guns are involved, or racial sensitivity training, regardless if you think that's BS or not. We have all of us have tiny prejudices or great prejudices. It varies, but we all have some prejudice towards people of color or people not of color, depending on whether or not you are or not. And they exist. And I feel like in the shooting of Philando Castile, that police officer may not have been like, I'm going to go out there and hunt me some black people. He just has a pre-existing prejudice that black people are violent or dangerous, and he felt concerned for his safety whenever he found out the fact that this guy had a gun, and he went and reached for his wallet in his pocket. And that's what cost this man his life, because this officer wasn't trained how to properly handle the situation, and he wasn't aware of his own prejudice or how it could affect his job. And this is just considering if he actually didn't do this on purpose as a hate crime, which we can't be sure about, but I really think that it is a matter of prejudice regardless. You can't say that we wouldn't have heard about this if the victims were white. Police use lethal force not infrequently, and there's obviously instances on a semi-regular basis of people of color and people not of color being killed by police where it was justified that we don't hear about because it wasn't something where the police's practice was questionable. These shootings that we've seen come to light is because their use of force was very questionable. And I think regardless, if the victim was black or white, we would have heard about it. But at the same time, I think the reason that these have gotten so big is because you can really see how this could be a race-related thing with the brutality and the unnecessary nature of these killings. I don't understand why people don't get why black people don't feel like their lives matter in this country. We can't forget the history of our country. Only the past 52 years has the Civil Rights Act of 1964 been in place. That is a very small fraction of our history as a country. My life as a white male has always mattered in this country. Always. And that's not gonna change. People saying Black Lives Matter is not a threat to whether or not my life matters or any other white people's life matters. It really isn't. Saying all lives matter is just such an unnecessary thing, and it's just something that's an antithesis to the Black Lives Matter movement. We never heard people saying that before the Black Lives Matter movement came around, and that came around as a response to police brutality. If police are picking out black people more often than they are white people, they have the right to be upset about it. They do. And we can't tell them not to be. They're allowed to be upset. We don't experience what they experience. And you can't dispute that. You can find the statistics. If you're going to go to imright.com and pull up the statistics, yeah, they're going to reflect what you say. But you can find statistics to back up what you want to say anywhere. But those aren't the statistics that are really true. And if you go out and talk to a black person, especially a black male, they will tell you that they have been stalked by police for no reason, on a not infrequent basis. You know, my mother had always thought that black people were treated the same by police until she got a job at a certain place in the city. And she was working with black men who had college degrees and were great guys, who all said that they had been stopped by police officers frequently for no reason. They had been questioned for crimes just because they were in the area. Police officers had stopped them to ask them what they were doing there. And that changed how she felt about that forever, because she got to hear about these experiences firsthand. As someone like myself who is not black, I am probably not going to experience that, and I'm not going to know from experience how black people are treated because I'm not one. It's not fair for me to try to deny their plight or deny how they feel whenever I don't know what it's like to be them. You know, I may be speaking on the behalf of the plight of black people, but it's because I hear their stories and I sympathize with them because I don't think that's fair how they're treated. I'm not trying to refute their statement without experience. I can back up their statement without experience because I want them to be treated equally and I believe them. Well, why would they make that up? Honestly. I just want to go on record before getting too far and say, you can be pro-black and pro-police. I am. I consider myself a civil rights activist, and I care very greatly about it. It's something that I want to do with my life. I want to help fight for equality. I want to help inner city kids of color. I really want to help people, but at the same time, I respect what the police do for us. I understand that they're not all bad people. A lot of them are good people that want to help people. They really are. And them being picked off by a sniper was a tragedy. But we gotta remember, that was a lone shooter. That doesn't define anybody. That guy was a lunatic. And it's terrible and tragic that this happened. You know, it's absolutely terrible. And it's not because of the protest. This guy was a lunatic. If you read anything about him, it was gonna happen eventually, and he just took advantage of a time when there was civil unrest. He would have done it at some point. You don't feel that way that he did your whole life and not do anything. You know, that guy was not well. You know, honestly. We all have to be willing to try to listen to each other. This is an issue that's bigger than all of us. Race applies to all of us. We're all here on this planet together. We have to work on this. You know, you may not like it. You may not. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you don't like it, because it's something that we have to work on. It's the unwillingness to work on it or to care that leaves us in the situation that we are now. People from both sides have to take the time to talk and work things out. We can move forward as long as we're willing to try. You know, I saw someone who I'm friends with post on Facebook about, like, this is a personal friend, not a Facebook friend, posted their opinions about this whole thing, and it pretty much downplayed the feelings of black people about this and tried to patronize them and say that how they felt about this was wrong. And I commented on it, talking about empathy and trying to be more understanding, and this person wasn't really coming from a place of experience, being a white female. And several of friends of hers who were black people commented talking about their experiences with police and how they haven't been treated fairly. And all of like those guys and her and me all went to the same high school, upper middle class white suburb high school, you know. And the one guy in particular is a very unassuming guy, and he has been harassed by police just because he's black. And there's just countless things and examples provided to this person to look at, and I was disgusted by the response that she eventually put out. It took a long time for her to get back to everybody, and at one point prior to that, people were saying, like, okay, are you going to respond? Like, what do you have to say about this? She made this big, bold statement, and you're not willing to back it up or try to support it. And she finally responded. She's like, oh, I'm sorry that I have better things to do, but I'll talk about it now. And she ended up going on to tell everybody that they're uneducated. Uneducated. What is she? How? You know, and it was just terrible. It shows how expendable people of color in this country are whenever pride gets in the way of something like this. You know, I can be a pretty stubborn person myself, and sometimes I won't admit that I've lost when I really should. But this is miles across the line. You know, whenever you have something like this, wherever you're faced with so much information and you just don't even try to argue it. You just call the people that disagree with you uneducated, which basically is just calling them stupid. It's, that's a matter of pride. And it came down to something like this where human life was lost and she was too proud to even listen to anybody. And this person is a normal person in our society that I've known for a long time and know not to be a bad person or a racist. This is the underlying racism that plagues our society that we need to stomp out. It's unrefutable. It exists. And we're not willing to address it. We have to. I know it's hard, and I know nobody wants to be called a racist, but this is something that exists with a lot of people who are white. And it doesn't make you a racist to have racial prejudices that you kind of have, but it makes you a racist to not be willing to work on them. But if you don't care enough to, whenever you're faced with how they affect people of color. This whole experience has just been so disheartening. It's just terrible. Because there'll be people I'm arguing with about this stuff who just want to catch you in gotchas. They're like, why this, but not this? It's always like, I'm going to win. It is not about winning. This is real issues. These are people dying. And then they'll say, well, look at the tragedy of the cops. I'm just like, what, are you going to pull another gotcha statement on me about this? Like, are you going to use that as a gotcha statement? And they do. It is terrible. That's an insult to the police officers. It's awful. And using this Blue Lives Matter stuff is just like the All Lives Matter thing. You can be pro-cop and pro-black. I support police officers, but I'm not going around saying Blue Lives Matter, because it is also an antithesis to the Black Lives Matter movement. Some guy drove into my work. I work as a security guard and yelled Blue Lives Matter at me when I'm not even a real cop. I know I wear a blue uniform, but I'm not a real cop, so that's also an insult to cops by equating them to security guards. But he yelled that to me because he's just stewing on it. He's sitting on it. He drove to work. He's like, I'm just so mad about those Black Lives Matter people that I'm going to yell this. That is what people feel about it. Because people have been saying that Blue Lives Matter far, far before the shooting in Dallas. We don't need to say that. We can support people on both sides, but the real big issue is pushing to make black people feel like we care about them, because this country doesn't treat them the same way that they treat other people. If you look at these shootings of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, ask yourself, if it was you or if it was one of your family members that was killed in that way, would you think that they were justified in killing you that way? And I can assure you that you would say no. Unless you're just that damn proud and just care that little, that you would just say that just so you can be right. It's just despicable and unbelievable. It's really an insult to police officers to use this Blue Lives Matter movement as the antithesis to the Black Lives Matter movement. Because you're only acting like you care about police officers to try to refute the Black Lives Matter movement. I just see people say, I hate how the, black people get all hooked up on a few police killings, regardless if they're racist or not. Excuse me? If a black police officer killed a white person because they were white and we got upset about it, or if there's an instance where a black officer killed a white person, it was questionable the practices he used, there would be an uproar. And if people said that we're getting too hinged on one thing, oh my god, the backlash to that person would be insane. That shows some inherent prejudice where we're just like, why are they getting so hinged on this stuff? A black person gets killed by police improperly every once in a while, so what? It's not that big of a percentage. Are you serious? It's a big deal. It's a huge deal. We have to care about this sort of thing. This is ridiculous. I think white people are getting just as worked up about this as anybody. They're jumping to massive conclusions, and I'm talking about especially predating the shooting in Dallas, because I don't want to put anything that has followed that is too much in particularly, because this has been a tragedy, but things that I've seen predating that are just insane in terms of anger. You would think that they were getting the crap kicked out of them by black people in the streets. I saw this one thing that just made me so mad. This was a few months ago. There's this website that was sponsored by the U.S. Marine Corps that published an article that was very widely shared on social media. It was about this guy who was a war hero who, there's a famous picture of him being carried by two other soldiers as he had been shot in the knee, and it was during a siege day during a war in the Middle East. I'm not sure which one, but it was a pretty famous picture, and, the article is pictured a war hero brutally beaten by Team Black Lives Matter movement members. Okay, well, first off, they aren't going to know who this guy is. He has a helmet on in that picture, and I'm pretty sure that when that picture was taken, predates these kids even being 8 or 10 years old. They don't know who he is. They may not know that he's a veteran. And not excusing people mugging somebody, but I read the article, and it said that he was like at a McDonald's, and these teenagers apparently were harassing him, and I'm not advocating people harassing anybody, but they harassed this guy, and they kept asking him if he thought Black Lives Mattered. I don't really know why you'd harass somebody like that, but whatever. And they kept asking him, and I guess he didn't answer with an answer that they liked, or he just ignored them. I feel like if he would have just said, yes, this might have ended, I don't know, I wasn't there. The article doesn't really go into what his answer was, or if he ignored them or what, for whatever reason. But, they ended up mugging him and taking his wallet after he left. I mean, don't go mug some guy. That's a douchey thing to do and steal his wallet. But, you're just stupid if you're trying to ask somebody if Black Lives Matter and then you rob him. These guys were just outliers, idiots, whatever. But, this article never proved that they were Black Lives Matter members. They mugged this guy. The only proof that they had that they were is they just asked this guy if Black Lives Matter. And the Marine Corps publishes this article with the title that they're Black Lives Matter movement members. We do so little in this country to take care of our veterans, but our Marine Corps sponsored Marine Corps will sponsor a webpage and allow this article to be shared and spoon feed veterans who have PTSD of this bullshit garbage that's not proven. Try to show that the Black Lives Matter movement is a threat to them. You know how dangerous of a thing this is? This is fucking bullshit. That is terrible. You should be disgusted with that. I went on a huge rant about it, and people that shared it were people who were my friends. I was disgusted with them for not even reading into it. If you're just that mad about this movement, look into it. Try to understand it. Realize that there is no, command center out telling people what to do. Even if those guys were members, they were not given directions to harass this guy and mug him. Especially because he was a war veteran. It's ridiculous. Nobody told them to do that. They did that on their own accord. And, people get mad at Obama about this. What, is he the king of black people or something? Or is he telling them what to do? He can't stop this. He can't just be like, hey, black people, I'm black. I'm the president. Stop it. And have everybody stop. How is it his fault? Why we gotta blame the black president for everything? As some former representative said that real America is coming for the Black Lives Matter movement and the president. He deleted the tweet because it was ridiculous. And also, that's just why? You're a representative and you put that little thought into that. You're ridiculous. What do you think? Do you think that Barack Obama is the president of Black Lives Matter or black people? How does a representative think that? Unbelievable. Or if he changed his mind, how was he able to sit down and put that on Twitter? We have to question who we're electing, just like how we should question who are allowed to be police officers. This is ridiculous. If this is white people's response, the people being upset about potential police violence towards them because of the color of their skin, we have a lot of questions to be asking about ourselves and what type of people we are as white people. This is ridiculous and embarrassing and pathetic. We can't forget the tragedy that happened in Dallas and recognize how terrible that it is, but we can't let this derail this whole thing by not recognizing that this was a lone shooter crazy person, and that a lot of people realize that most police officers are good people, and these are outliers, but these are outliers that we have the power to prevent from being officers, and we have the power to stop these crimes from happening. Nobody is trying to say that we should kill police officers or that all cops are bad people. That is a creation of people who feel threatened by the Black Lives Matter movement for whatever reason. This is just such a frustrating situation because, for me personally, I want to help people. I want to help their racial tensions get better in this country. I want people to feel equal. And I'm a college student, and I just see things going backwards. It feels like by the time I'm out of college, I'm going to have spent, over $100,000, in student loan debt, to have all the social work and advocacy and fighting that will be my life's work go towards getting society and race issues back to where they once were. And that's just incredibly depressing for me. I'm not trying to say change for me or anything like that, but it just shows how our country is going backwards. And this doesn't have to happen. We just need to listen to each other, I'm not trying to insult anybody or throw anybody under the bus. I'm just trying to get people to listen to each other and respect one another. That's just something that's just so absent from our society nowadays. And it's just so obvious in issues like this where we're just going backwards. It's just terrible. And it really is. Just lastly, I know people are gonna come up with these couple of statistics that or things, to try to disprove what I have to say, or say that this isn't that big of an issue. People are gonna say, well, look at black on black crime. Well, maybe the police will stop killing them when they stop killing each other. How dare you say something like that? How dare you try to pick out one individual person, like these two men who were killed, and especially Philando Castro, who was a role model. He had no criminal record, none, and say that he doesn't deserve equal treatment by police because of black on black violence. How dare you? And do you realize that in your attempt to say that, there isn't racism in this country, or black people are treated fairly, you have marginalized the whole group of people by trying to define these individuals by the actions of their race as a whole. How dare you? That's disgusting. That is the type of thinking that sends us just falling backwards, head over heels. It is how. Just think about what you're saying. The hypocrisy is so obvious. And you either just don't realize it, or you're just not willing to realize it, or it's willful ignorance. Why? Why does this have to be about pride? Why does this have to be the way that it is? Why can't people be willing to listen to each other? There is an obvious poverty cycle in this country for minorities. You can't deny that. But how can you blame people for not wanting to aspire to more, or believing that they can do things with their lives that they haven't seen people in their community do, when they can't even trust the police, the people that are supposed to protect them? They don't trust them because they feel that these police officers will treat them differently because of the color of their skin. The police are an institution of our society, and they don't feel that institution treats them fairly. And in a lot of cases, they don't. I spent the first half of my life growing up in a black inner city neighborhood, and the people there are treated differently than they were in communities outside of there. As I said, I went to high school in a white suburb, and going to school there, I told people that I was from that area. This would happen to come up, and they wouldn't believe me. They said I didn't live there. I didn't act like it. I wasn't black, so I'm not from there. Or I don't act black, so I'm not from there. It's just ridiculous. These are the preconceived notions of teenagers that have been programmed into them by their parents. And it has to stop. It's, the signs of racism or prejudice are everywhere, and we aren't willing to do anything about it. We just get mad and play victim, and, get angry when people dare question our thinking. I would prefer if people stop yelling racist anytime somebody has a prejudice, but they have the right to do so, and you getting angry about it is unfair because they may have a point. You can't be mad at somebody for picking out something that you do that's potentially racist just because you don't want to be called that. That's a pride thing once again. You're not willing to change how you think because you're insulted or it hurts your pride. That sets us back. And it's us as individuals that have the power to change things on a societal level. And every single one of us who isn't willing to take that criticism and try to change or try to, put some thought to it is part of the problem. And all these things are partially your fault. We have to change. We have to get over ourselves. This is going to take cooperation from people of all sides and all races, but we can do this if we are willing to try. We have to stop getting so mad as white people. We have to be fair. Both sides have to be fair. And, racism will never go away. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive for more equality. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't. We have the power to change things. The world's changing every day. Let's change to move forward. Let's change for understanding. Let's make the world a better place for our children and our children's children, and have our world be fair for everybody. And we can really move towards that, but right now we're moving backwards. And it has to stop. It has to stop.